detective, thrill me.
Thanks for tuning in. It's just me and Jared tonight. We're doing something a little bit different. We're going to rate our favourite slasher flicks, which should be a really interesting and deep thinking sort of podcast, Jared.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of curveballs in there. Pretty sure it's going to be exactly what you're thinking.
Basically, we're throw down our top 3 slashers, our least favourite. We'll get in there. And then we're going to have a look at, favourite kills, least favourite, that sort of stuff. We're going to do a little bit of that. So, first things first, top 3 slashers. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tee off first. Number 3 for me, and I'm going to preface this with these are the films that I would put on. Mm-hmm. So, when I want to watch a slasher film, these are the 3 that I go for. Some people would argue I've lost my fucking shit.
No, I'd be arguing that you need to hand me the remote control.
Yeah. All right. My first, number 3, Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason Lives.
Yep.
Why'd I have to go and dig up Jason? Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
I really enjoy that. I think it kind of was meta before that sort of meta horror stuff was actually happening.
Yeah, well, it was the first one to say it's bordering on ridiculous now. yeah, we've had Roy.
We weren't happy with Roy. So what we'll do is we'll take the piss. Is that? I mean, some would argue Roy was taking the piss.
Yeah, well. The difference was I think Tom McLaughlin looked at it and said, well, at least I'm going to try and make it stupid. You blokes just made it stupid.
For me, Part 6, he actually put in a fair bit of it. Like, if you actually look closely at Part 6, it's a pretty solid film. Like, he's actually had a really good crack at the Friday the 13th mythology. He's thrown in a lot of little nods to other horror films that he loves and a gothic nature to it. And it's funny. Like, it's meant to be funny. And I think for the most part it actually works. And it's one of the more enjoyable Fridays out there.
Yeah, I reckon it's probably the best one. Bar Jason X, of course.
There'd be an argument to say Part 4 is actually the best one.
Yeah, I think 6
considering
and 4.
you get the template almost spot on.
Yeah, but for me it's 6 because of the humour. And
yeah, it just adds something different. And I think by that stage Jason was getting stale. It's kind of sad that it wasn't a bigger hit because I think that would have been a nice... They could have curved off into something else. Mm. And Part 7 kind of went back to bog standard Jason sort of stuff.
Yep.
But that's my number 3. What about you?
Well, I don't actually have any of the Fridays. I'll just put out there. I thought about it, and I do love those movies. But when it came down to the top 3, I couldn't sneak one in there. The third one for me is Elm Street.
Watch this.
The first one.
The original, yes.
Yeah, I tossed up between number 3 and this one. And 3, in a lot of ways, is probably still my favourite. But when I go back to it, this one's... I mean, it's hard to go past where it all started and when Freddy was intent... he was conceived as trying to be scary and...
Yeah.
And, of course, you got the likes of Rod running around telling people...
Up yours with that twirly lawnmower.
Yeah. It's hard to go past that one. And... it's probably still the one I would go back to first, even with Part 3, especially after we watched Part 3 recently and found a couple more of the issues that sort of have dated it a little bit more. I still love Part 3 and what it added to the mythology and the whole Dream Warriors concept, but I think Part 1 is still the peak for me, and it's a twist on the slasher. It's one of the few in the 80s that came with like just a different idea that was a really good idea.
Yeah, and for me, the Elm Street franchise is the one that I'm kind of most disappointed with at this point in time, because I look back on that first one and I think, look at how great how tightly plotted and how well done this was, and now look at where we are.
Yeah.
And
I
yet
still
we have
think-
such a bigger sandbox to play in, and
I still,
we've
that,
mucked
well,
it
that's the
up.
thing. I still think this is the one with more legs than most of them. You know, you look what they did with Halloween recently, and you think surely someone's got a good idea floating around with Elm Street too, because it's got so much more of a, as you said, it's a sandbox. You can do so many things with it.
Yeah.
And because Freddy's in the dream world, the kills are just so, you got so much scope there and so much imagination that can be put into it.
Plus,
It
you know
doesn't-
what? You can actually hire filmmakers who have a interesting palette and stuff, because the dream world allows for interesting and weird stuff to go on. You don't have to hire necessarily horror style directors and stuff like that. And I think
Yeah.
this one's just got so much going for it. And and the original is still genuinely scary. It's just really well done.
Yep.
And it's a very good film. My number 2, this is a personal favourite. This is the one I put on most whenever I'm down, Jared. I like to be pepped up with a bit of mayhem and murder. My Bloody Valentine.
I was going to say
The
it's gotta
original
be-
My
gotta
Bloody
be My Bloody
Valentine.
Valentine, doesn't it?
It happened once. It happened twice. Cancel the dancer, it'll happen twice.
It's real. What I like about it is it's not teenagers. It's blue collar. I love the small town aesthetic they get. I love that shit. But what I also love about it is the remastered version they put out with the extra gore that had been missing, that they'd only recently come across, and it gives the film a bit more punch. Like, it really, watching it without it, it's still good, but it lacks the burning or
Yeah.
the Prowler, those ones that had that real visceral gore.
Yep.
Then you get this and you realise, it was really intended to be quite nasty and quite
Yeah.
vicious, and it does deliver there. So it makes it, I think, a step better again. So I only watched it
Actually-
3 or 4 months ago and loved it.
I actually think the Miner is still one of the better looking
Yes.
slashes too. Like, the costume is very creepy and
And there's a couple of really cool scenes. Like, I really love the bit with the couple in the mine, the top of the mine, and he goes to get beer, and then the miner's suits start dropping down around her.
Yeah.
And she's trying to get away out, and she obviously runs straight into him, and he impales her by the head on the shower. I mean, that stuff's gold. Like, it really does work, and I think it's one of the best slashes. Certainly one of the best after Friday the 13th. Well, after
doubt.
Friday the 13th had come out, it was probably the best one to come out after it.
well, look, quite honestly, My Bloody Valentine's probably a better movie than the first Friday.
Yeah.
It's just-
Well, it'd be very close. Yeah.
It's the Friday the 13th left more of that legacy and the little cottage industry that it became. But if I had to pick side by side, I've been a bit down on Friday and the first one in recent years. I'd probably watch My Bloody Valentine before that. So
And quick share of the remake. I enjoyed the remake
yeah,
too.
the remake was a lot of fun.
It was good fun. All right, number 2 for you, mate.
Halloween.
Halloween.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
So as I said, no surprises. Like, for me, I've watched that movie so many times, but I would still go back to it in a heartbeat. There's still so many scenes that I've seen over and over that I just look at and still get a little bit of a chill. Not as much as you used to, but now you look at it and you appreciate the sort of craftsmanship of the whole thing. The whole thing being bathed in shadow, and the way that they craft the scares is just, it's still pretty much hasn't been matched.
Yeah.
in my mind,
And
so-
I actually went back and watched it prior to watching the new one.
Yep.
And, again, the new one is a really good movie.
Yep.
But even it couldn't quite capture that sort of creepiness that the original sort of dropped, and it's still very difficult to surpass, I think.
Yeah, and Michael for me is still the best aesthetic when it comes to the slashers. Like, you look at him and he kind of personifies exactly what they were going with that whole boogeyman aspect. That mask, the Shatner mask with the eye holes and shit is just perfect.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely.
yeah,
Definitely
easy
a
one
favourite.
for me.
Well, that segues into me because that's my number 1.
Yep.
You can watch this a million times. I still think it has some power. even 40, 50 years later, you know, it's one of those classic films that I don't think will ever be forgotten, especially for horror fans. I could turn it on and be enthralled, whereas a lot of movies today, you'd whack them on, next thing you know, you'd be on your phone within minutes, you know.
Yeah, you could turn it on any day and fire up the age-old debate, is there nipple or is there not? Like, you know.
Yeah. That debate has been now that I've got the Blu-ray box, has been fully handled. We've been through.
Yeah, it's ended.
Yeah. Your number one.
Well, yeah, again, no surprises. Scream.
See, the police are always off track with this shit. If they'd watch Prom Night, they'd save time. There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect.
It's endlessly watchable. Like, the look of the killer, like the Ghostface costume is excellent. I also like that Ghostface is a bit of a clumsy.
Yeah.
Not clumsy, but, you know,
He doesn't hit the mark.
He
every
gets
time.
nailed a couple of times. The
Well,
phone,
he gets a beer bottle to the testicles.
yeah, he gets knocked over by the couch too.
Yeah,
he
yeah,
trips over the couch, and I think that, you know, the addition of the phone calls as well was just excellent, and it's one of the few that really nailed a whodunit twist kind of.
Yeah.
You know, it's been done a few times, but never for me as memorably as this one. Like when the whole reveal came, you were just like, jeez, you know, I didn't see it coming. And even people that did see part of it coming have been conditioned to not have expected the extra little kick that we got of two of them, you know. So yeah, and it was a gateway for me as well, being one of the first movies that I got really kind of obsessed with almost. I just had to continue watching it and try to know more about it, and so yeah, that's my personal.
Yeah, look,
top of the pile.
that would definitely be just outside my three. If I had a couple, if, you know, I had five, we had five on the table, that would definitely be in it. The great thing about it, I think, is the phone calls add that menace that was missing from a lot of slasher films as we got past the 80s, the early 80s, where there was a glut of them, where they'd kind of run the whole scare side of it out of it.
Yep.
It was just basically an excuse to see people get killed. We waited long enough for the Scream to come back in. There was plenty of violence and gore, but there was also a bit of menace. And the ending, you're right, they condition you to believe that the twist is him, is Billy, but then the double whammy, Stu, and I don't think anybody saw it coming.
Yeah,
and
endlessly
that's what,
quotable too. Endlessly quotable.
Yeah,
some real classic bits of work. Again, some humour in there. There's a couple of really good laughs.
Yeah, it's kind of sad again where this franchise ended up.
Well, yeah. See, I'm still a big fan of Part 2. I still think Part 2 is better than it got credit for.
Just to go slightly off a tangent here.
I can't
just
really
to go slightly off a
much.
tangent. I watched them all. Mm-hmm. I like 2.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I like it, but you can start to see, for me personally, the last half hour you start to see the problems that begin cropping up in 3 and 4, and that is, I mean, there's a couple of sequences. One in particular that I absolutely hate is the one where they're trying to get out of the cop car. It is just goes on forever, and it's like you got us the first time. You should have let it go, but then they double up and do it again, and it's like, oh my god, like, you know. I felt we were starting to see some of the issues. I do agree, though, that the ending of 2 makes more sense now.
Well, it was better.
It actually cuts mustard
kind of
now.
Before
it's good.
its time. Like, I remember seeing that whole internet thing and thinking, Jesus. But now we live in an age where, you know, stuff like that has happened.
Yeah, it actually
So
it holds more weight now than it did when it came out. Apart from some pretty over-the-top acting.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Still not so sure about the mum either. That was maybe it could have. I feel like if the script hadn't been leaked, perhaps the ending would have been better.
Yeah,
because they would have kept that internet angle and then come up with something that It might have held up a bit better.
Yeah, like the leak didn't help because they then had to make changes that they probably didn't necessarily need or want.
Yep.
And I think it turned out that some of those similar problems happened in 3 and 4, where they had behind the scenes issues and things like that. So,
I'm still not sure that they could have been rescued.
no, 4 was absolute pits. It was terrible. Like, it really was. And it was trepidation when I was going in to see it.
Yeah. I saw it with you.
Yeah, it was worse than I expected.
I vividly remember, fuck Bruce Willis, and we look at each other and go,
come on. The whole thing was bad. Even the idea, which kind of had a bit of legs about fame, murder for fame.
Yeah.
That had a little bit of legs, but it was just so clumsily done.
Yeah. I still think it should have been the whole class.
That would have been cool.
I think it should have been the whole class. If you're talking about, people wanting to be famous and how many people, if you're making a comment on how many people get caught up with that, I thought it would have been a cool way to go. But I don't know. I still don't know. The whole movie was, as you said,
slight tangent there, but like that was not a good film. All right, now worst.
So I think we've gone a little bit different here.
Oh, sorry, hang on. Before we get to worst, I have one other honourable mention.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it in my top 5.
Yeah.
But I actually really enjoyed the remake of Sorority Row.
Yeah,
I think it's actually really good.
It would be nowhere near my top 5, but I feel like it didn't get enough.
Yeah, it didn't get enough love
because I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it had moments that I really liked, and I think that
especially in a period where we weren't getting very many.
We were getting some pretty average stuff then. So I have a bit of a soft spot for that. All right, so worst. You've gone in a totally different direction because I've plumbed the depths.
First, because you plumbed the depths, whereas I felt like if we plumb the depths, it's hard to just pick one of the real stinkers.
The reason why I've plumbed this one is because I remember getting this in the video store years and years back. I saw it. I read the back. It told me it was a slasher flick. I thought, right, I haven't seen a slasher movie for a while. I'll give it a go. It was called Bloody Murder, and it was basically Friday the 13th. Made in 2000, and I remember putting it on, and about 10 minutes in, I was just sitting there going, like, is this like a school group that sort of got together and somehow this got released? It was about 70 minutes long. It had the kind of gore where someone gets their throat cut, and like there's a red line that goes across the throat, and that's it. And I was kind of like, oh my God. And I forced my way through the picture, and then I never wanted to hear or speak about it again. Then, of course, I mentioned worst slasher movies, and I thought, oh, Bloody Murder, I remember that. So, I plumbed the depths. Yeah, it was just a nightmare.
So the way that I went with this is that, I mean, there's been so many bloody murders over the journey.
Yeah.
So the way that I went with it is, I went with one that still gets a bit of buzz that I just cannot get on board with. It's Mad Men.
What is it, baby? What's wrong?
I saw something horrible. It was big and huge and dark. I don't know.
See for myself. You want to wait here or come with me?
Why can't we go back to the office?
What good is that? Let's find out for sure what you saw, if anything at all, okay?
Yeah.
even today, I was looking at a list of, the top 25 slashers, and Mad Men's on there, and I couldn't believe it.
You were fuming.
I was fuming because it wouldn't be a stretch to call the movie bloody inept. It's terrible.
Look.
They were saying, oh, look, it's got this lovely blue hue to it. But I don't give a shit. If it's a terrible movie, I don't care what it... you've filmed... You've lensed a few nice shots there, but it's unwatchable garbage.
What you've lensed on the screen is just pure shit. I mean, look, honestly, if you listen back to our Mad Men episode, you'll realise that I don't like the picture at all either.
Yeah.
I mean...
See, I don't know. I can't recall. I don't think I've ever given anything 0. Maybe I have. But I think I even gave Mad Men half a star just for the effort of making a movie.
You did.
But I couldn't give it any more than that.
I gave it half a star because you turned up and you did the work, basically. So you had some pages. You punched it out.
But just the other day, it's probably at the forefront of my mind because I read about a remake. Oh fuck! I'll see it, but I'm thinking I don't know why Madman kind of hangs around in
I
these
think it's
lists
because
of,
it was 81, I think, so it wasn't too far after Friday. It basically stuck to that Friday template. It was almost identical in its setup.
Yeah.
But to me, Madman was a buffoon. He was just a big buffoon.
He was a buffoon. There was 5-minute spa scenes.
Including some pretty ropey love songs.
Remember when they're at the campfire too, and they hurl a rock and it seems to smash Madman's window.
It flies like 400 metres.
Everything about the movie just stank to high heaven.
They let that bloke who's an absolute asshole, who's throwing the rocks and abusing people, he survives. He is murder number one for me.
Yep.
Yeah, look, word of a remake, I don't understand. I think it's just kind of got a cult following.
Yeah, it does, but this is the thing. I don't understand it.
Considering,
I could be out on my own here. I could be on an island with Madman, but I just can't see I cannot see the appeal.
Well, put it this way, I think it gets more buzz than the Prowler or something like that, which is definitely a better movie. Definitely.
Yeah, no question.
The fact that Tom Savini's there, that's enough.
Exactly. That'll do.
Even if the movie's pure garbage, it makes no sense.
Yeah, because when Tom Savini's turning up, the movie's got a lovely red hue to it.
But yeah, I don't understand I too don't understand the kind of the love for Madman. I'll throw another honourable mention at you after we watched it and did a podcast. I don't hate this film, but there's a fair bit of love for I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I don't quite... After re-watching it, I think it doesn't stand up to that.
I've still got a soft spot for it, but more because of the period of time when it was out.
Yeah, the 90s after Scream.
And, but yeah, it
didn't stand up.
Problems.
Like, it's one thing to say, I still know what you did last summer, stupid, but at least
it had Jack Black making me laugh.
Well, it had a few laughs and stuff, and it didn't take itself as seriously. I think the problem with I Know What You Did Last Summer is it takes itself super seriously, but it's got a lot of holes. So once you start looking at it and go, well, they're taking this seriously.
There's a lot of holes.
So stupid.
I still can't understand Ryan Phillippe telling Jennifer Love Hewitt and Sarah Michelle Gellar,
you look like shit.
You look like shit. Yeah. That is never true with a pair of women like that.
Are you still pissed from a year ago?
I think so.
All right, let's get into a couple of favourites here. First thing we'll do is talk about Final Girls.
Yep.
Right? My favourite Final Girl is Ginny from Friday the 13th Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Personal favourite. She's actually got a brain. She's tough. She has a crack at Jason and gives it right to him. There's a whole thing at the end involving the psychology and putting on the Mrs. Voorhees' sweater and all that sort of stuff. And
yeah.
I think that stuff was awesome, and I thought Amy Steele was a really good choice. Like, she actually does a really good job. And so she's, like, to me, I'd love to see, if there was a Friday where they sort of brought people back, her character would be a great one to see again.
Mm.
And in fact, I believe they were going to in Part 3. But she balked on money.
Yeah.
That was the end of that.
Yeah, as soon as you ask for a little bit more, we can work without you. That's how they used to operate. Look, I had a big turnaround on Part 2. There was a quite a while where I didn't like it. Yeah, but now, I feel I'm the same. I think she's fantastic, and the last couple of times I've watched it, I've enjoyed it.
Because there was a lot of shit.
Because I thought it was down the bottom of the pile, but it's right up there as one of the better ones.
And there's always a lot of shit flying around back in that early 80s period from the critics and that, obviously, who didn't like slasher flicks. And they were always saying that the final girls are dumb, they do the wrong thing, they run the wrong way. And in some cases, yes, that occurs in these films. And you kind of have to go with it. It's kind of part of the what you should expect from your slasher flicks. But what I liked about 2 is that didn't happen. Like she went away from some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I really liked that.
Yep.
And I thought that she was probably the best of the franchise, no doubt. And to me personally, the best final girl, apart from probably Laurie Strode.
Yeah. Well, that was segueing into mine. That was mine. Mainly because now there's been a couple of different iterations of it. Like the first one obviously holds a special place because the movie was so good, but now you've got the last one that we just saw was a really good portrayal of Laurie Strode again.
And I actually think she good kudos for H2O as well.
H2O
I thought that was a slightly different variation again.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, I think because you've got...
What about Resurrection, though?
Because we've got years to go with now. We've got some depth to run with. The other one for me was Sydney. Again, it's part and parcel of what Scream was, but she was supposed to be the antithesis of all that. She wasn't a ditz. She was saying, the chick's always running down the stairs, or running up the stairs when she should be heading out the front door and that sort of thing. And she was tough as well. So I was a big fan of Neve Campbell in that one. So it was probably that was a toss up. If it hadn't have been for the extra sort of entries that Laurie Strode's got, and being able to go watch the first one and then now watch a new one 40 years later and see the character kind of reinterpreted again in a really, really good fashion, probably would have been a tough call, but it's got to be.
Well, Laurie's got a bigger arc.
Yeah,
like there's years of things that they thought about and they were able to bring back. Sydney's period was over a very short period.
Yeah,
and in a way, like they felt a little bit the same.
And 3 and 4,
and they brought it back for 4, but she didn't even feel like the protagonist in that one.
No,
that one kind of had some issues, and it kind of, this whole conversation segues into my worst. My least favourite is Gale Weathers, because as those movies went along, she was integral to the first one, and I appreciate what. And I'm certainly not knocking Courtney Cox. I think Courtney Cox is fine. Like, her performance is fine. But the fact is, she became irrelevant.
Was she a final girl? Or just...
Well, she always survived, I guess. I'm going by the fact that she was always at the end. She wasn't, in the case of Scream, Sydney was probably your final girl.
Yeah.
But Gale Weathers was always there.
Yep.
And she became superfluous. And I just kept thinking... Wouldn't you have killed her in 3? Like, wouldn't that have been the kicker at the start?
Yeah.
Killed Gale and Dewey? That brings Sydney out of hiding? But you kill Cotton Weary and you leave these two fucking idiots walking around surviving.
Yeah.
It made no sense. And then they roll her out in 4. And I believe there's a sequence in 4 where she gets attacked. And they kind of leave it on a cliffhanger that she might be dead. And she's not fucking dead. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous, like she has brought nothing to these last couple of films.
Yeah.
So she's not a favourite of mine. And it's got nothing to do, again, with the actress or the performance. It's just that the character seems useless.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Where are you going on
well,
the
it's
absolute worst?
Again, funnily enough, if you're talking about useless characters, it's Dewey is equally as like I really enjoyed him in the first one, to a point in the second one, but 3 and 4, it's like, what are we doing? Like, what?
And that's why I'm saying, I always felt after rewatching 3, your opening sting was to kill Gale and Dewey.
Yep.
And to bring Sydney out of hiding because of those deaths. Whereas you bring Sydney out of hiding over the death of Cotton Weary, she probably couldn't have given a rat's.
No, that's exactly right.
It didn't make sense, and it was because the series kept trying to cling to these characters. Oh, you love these guys, but we don't.
We did love them, but the usefulness now is probably in, as you said, getting a bit of mileage out of getting rid of one of them.
Yeah, and it would have been a nice way to sort of Because remember how 3 kept having the all bets are off, the rules? All bets are off, but yet they're not.
Yeah, well, that's exactly
Never
right.
off.
All bets are off, but these guys are going to hang around.
So that would have hit that mark.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
bets are off.
Yep.
Characters that we loved from the first 2 films are dead. Mm-hmm. Kind of like what they did with Randy.
Well, yes. Randy should have been the one to go a bit longer, I think, because that was his whole purpose. But anyway, like...
Let's get away from that.
Yeah. If we're going with Final Girls, it's funny you mentioned I Know What You Did Last Summer because...
That's where you're going?
Julie James.
Yeah.
She's there. She's window dressing.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Somewhat.
The other one that piqued my interest was Prom Night, the remake.
Oh, yeah. Oh, but that was a whole
That was a
package
whole mess.
of characters
Yeah,
who shouldn't have been in it.
Yeah, that was a whole mess altogether.
Look,
but
honestly, that's probably in my worst slashes too.
Yeah, but
I forgot about that.
Julie's just, I don't know, she just wanders around from situation to situation that I feel like the whole movie I was thinking she shouldn't have been, I would have done something else. I wouldn't have come back to town. I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have done that. I would have stuck to my guns when, we're having a blue with Bullhead Brian for Leaf about but we need to cover this up. But,
No thanks.
no, I'm good.
No, I would have gone, we're covering it up.
Covering it up.
Straight on the blower.
Yeah. So yeah, she was a pretty bad one. Again, I said, I've got a fondness for this movie, and I still do. But the warts are showing at this point.
It's like a witch. It's got a gigantic nose.
Yeah.
She kind of doesn't do a lot. I guess the film doesn't really allow her to do much.
No.
Like, it's kind of like the movie doesn't spring into action. Like, in some of the older slasher films, for me, there was always that chase that occurred.
Yep.
It was killer v final protagonist, and the chase usually went for 10 or 15 minutes where they kind of cat and moused each other and chased each other around. I Know What You Did Last Summer surprisingly doesn't have a lot of that. It's kind of like they stick that in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And Ray's involved too, so it doesn't really... It's not just her on her own.
That doesn't help. Freddie Prinze. Got a bit of time for the man, but as an actor, he's
and it didn't come off well in that particular film. No. All right, favourite characters.
Favourites.
Favourite character. You know what? I've got 2.
Yeah.
Demon.
Yeah.
From Friday 5.
Yep.
The damn enchiladas.
Funnily enough, that's mine.
He is in the movie for what? 5 minutes?
5 minutes tops.
It's comic genius. It is. It's brilliant. It's the best part of part 5. It's hard. It's
the
funny
guy's
to
got
say
split personality. He's cheery and singing songs. The next thing you know, he's telling you he's going to knock your head off.
He's a loose cannon. He brings a full buffet dinner with him in the back of his van.
Some of which we can't be sure hasn't been in the van for 2 weeks already.
I feel a lot better when I'm out of here. This shit box is gross.
Thanks, I'll have an egg roll. Oh, it tastes like plastic. Rubber. But Demon is the best thing about Friday 5.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a real dislike for Friday 5.
I have problems.
I made that perfectly clear in our SmackDown. And I didn't like it because it was too generic. It was too much of an exact carbon copy of what you were hoping for.
Yeah.
But yet with no characterizations, nothing. Demon, on the other hand, in that 5 minutes is more of a more detailed character than some of the others.
We know he seems to have a case of irritable bowel syndrome or something like that.
Look, what people forget is the pathos involved. He's got IBS.
The depth of the bloke and the pain that he goes through when he's sitting on the toilet passing those damn enchiladas.
Think about this. Think about how he must feel. He has got a serious case of IBS and then some bastard comes along and kills him on the toilet.
Doesn't even give him a chance.
Think about it. It's come full circle on him. Just like those. It's repeating on him, just like the bloody enchiladas.
Yeah. I cannot help myself though. Sometimes, quite honestly, sometimes I walk into the toilet and I'm singing to myself, all because of this bloke.
Well, what people forget is in his character development, that's how he loosened his bowels. Yeah. Give me a few minutes, love. Hey, he's good fun. And strangely enough, even though I ripped the shit out of him when we covered, I still noticed it last summer. Jack Black always gets it right. Yeah. Titus. Yeah.
Thank you very much. What's up? Everybody needs something. What about the ladies, the sweet young ladies? Is there anything I can do?
Watching it the last time, it was... Yeah, the most enjoyable parts of the movie was when he was in.
Yeah, that's right. And he, again, another character that spends maybe 5 or 10 minutes. He might get a little bit more time on screen than Demon does. He has no explosive diarrhea at all in that time, but he has more. He gets more sort of giggles and gets more. You enjoy seeing him around, than the rest of the characters in the film. So I always get a laugh out of him.
Yes, fair enough.
Worst characters. This was easy for me.
Ooh. Yeah, well, I've got it. I might be on the same track because I'll let you go first. I'll let you continue on.
Junior from Friday 5.
Yeah, well,
absolute penis.
I've actually gone him and his mother both get
double banger on them.
Yeah, they get the. I feel I couldn't separate them. They both got the gong.
Say it like you mean it, Ma.
Would you shut the fuck up?
They were dreadful.
Juniors, I just don't understand it. Like, again, part 5's my biggest problem with part 5 is it just didn't feel like there was any connective tissue between these sequences where people got killed.
Yeah.
That was all it was. It was like these little tiny 5-minute death scenes, and then they were all just shoveled in next to each other.
Yeah.
So you didn't know Junior from a bar of soap, other than that he sat at the table and ate fucking swill that his mum was cooking up. And
that guaranteed is going to contribute to Crystal Lake's much publicised bloody dysentery problems.
Wait, if him and Harold ever got together, it's a fucking nuclear explosion of bacteria. I can tell you now, mate.
And guaranteed Junior didn't wipe either. So, yeah, look, I expect, when you watch a Friday film, you expect to stretch reality a little bit. But when you see a bloke get upset and respond to those emotions by jumping on his motorbike and doing laps around his house, screaming like an idiot, I was, it stretched it a little bit too far for me. I'm sitting there going, okay, so they wanted to lop his head off while he's riding a bike, but we couldn't figure out a better way to do it than this.
The fact that he's riding around going, he hurt me. I mean, death could not come quickly enough.
I know.
Oh, it was just...
See, Friday 5's got a couple of contenders.
The Greasers.
the bloke with the chocolate bar.
Joey,
who
the chick doing the robot.
If you delve into Crystal Lake memories, believes he got the part for his nuanced portrayal of mental difficulties.
He has got to be taking the piss. He has to be. You know what? 5's also got that bloke who rocks up outside the diner with the cocaine and starts yelling out, "Voila!" That's all he does for fucking 5 minutes before he gets an axe to the back of his head.
Oh, shit. And of course, it's also got
to the eyeballs, then gets his head melted into the axe.
It's also got the fucking drifter, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's probably not around. He's not around long enough to qualify.
He's an extra. He's not a character. He's just
one of the most baffling baffling instances of someone popping up to get killed.
On a tangent too. Because I actually listened back to our Smackdown episode, and I have a question that I didn't pose during that period. Is nymphomania considered a mental health problem? Because it's nymphomaniac.
If like obviously, I'd say you'd probably go to a niche clinic for that one. You probably wouldn't be just, lumped in with.
Yeah, look, it's a 30-day outpatient program. I'll tell you right now, it's not happening in fucking. Where was it again? The Institute of Mental Health, down by beautiful Crystal Lake.
Oh, I don't know. Obviously, the Department of Health is, going through the caseloads and thinking, we've got a couple of nymphomaniacs. Where do we put them? You better chuck them into that nice little facility down by the lake. The one with the people that have the tendency to attack other people with axes and things like that.
You got this health department sitting there. They've got a pile for the Hunger Institute. They got a pile for that fucking place where Herbert West does his experiments.
Miskatonic University.
Hang on, 2 nymphos, what do we do? Miskatonic or? No, we don't need them lobotomised. Put them in Hunger Institute.
They might last a weekend or two.
I hear there's a serial killer on the loose over there. Don't worry about it, mate. It's okay. Sorry, that was a tangent. But yeah, fucking Part 5's got 5 or 6 blokes who would easily make the worst character list.
Oh, and obviously going by the tropes, if sex equals death, they never stood a chance. A pair of nymphos as soon as they turned up on screen. Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah, because they're nymphos, they're basically killed on sight.
Like everyone else in Part 5. we get these deep introductions to all the characters before they're wiped out.
It's very amusing, the juxtaposition between the fact that Demon's our favourite character and all these other weaknesses are all on our negative list. Yeah. Oh, God. All right. Okay. I think the last thing we'll cover is our favourite kill from a slasher picture. My personal favourite, partially because it's verging on the ridiculous, but not quite, and it is the medical hacksaw across the throat, then twists his neck around in Friday the 13th Part 4.
Right.
Absolutely awesome. It just looks great the way they do it, and it's kind of grotesque. It shows that Jason's super strong. It's fucking ridiculous, but it's not too ridiculous. We're not punching people's hearts out. We're close, but we're not punching anyone's heart out. And I just love it. I think it looks great.
Yep.
And it's really well shot too, the way they kind of cut away after he gets slashed, and they cut to him back to front. I think he's got his clothes on back to front.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I ended up going for a Freddy one. Because obviously there's some absolutely ridiculous ones, but when they get it right, I think it's hard to top. Yeah, the Freddy ones are always so memorable. So I went with the veins from Part 3.
Ah, yes.
And obviously we cover the part of how he walks through a door, which doesn't really stand up.
But he should have been in Miskatonic.
Yeah,
he has a fair assessment.
But if you take just the whole sequence from when the little doll falls off the wall and then
and its face goes.
Yeah, just like the imagination of taking his interest to that kind of extreme when he gets killed. I thought it was, it's one of those. It's Freddy at his peak.
Yes,
for mine.
Honourable mention to Johnny Depp being turned into fucking just blood.
Yeah, exactly. My honourable mention was also the bloody frozen face in Jason X.
Yes. Jason X had a few great pleasures.
Few and far between.
But that bit was really cool.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about it when we covered it, was that they didn't use that stuff enough. That was cool because it was a kind of futuristic. It brought Jason into doing something that it wasn't just knife or slash. It was an interesting way of doing it.
That's where it should have been. It should have been more like that.
Yeah, and it didn't do that, but that kill is actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I do also have a soft spot for Julius getting his head punched off.
Oh, massive.
I just think that's kind of, it's kind of ironic about how he punches the buggery out of him, then just gives up at the last minute before gets his head punched off.
And then it lands in the bin.
Yeah. Least favourite kill.
There's a few.
Death by computer game. Freddy's dead. We said this was the lowest ever Freddy Krueger.
So it's the conundrum that is Freddy Krueger, isn't it? My favourite kill is a Freddy one, but my least favourite's going to be a Freddy one as well.
Yeah, really?
So, yeah.
It's not fucking Super Freddy, is it?
Yeah. It was actually, yeah. It was. I was tossing up between the video game or Super Freddy.
Oh, Super Freddy. Everything about that was stupid.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know how you put that together and think there's going to be an ounce of fucking scare in there when you put the Super Freddy one together. You know, it's such a fine line because the marionette one could have been on a similar track, but it's just done so much better than Super Freddy.
Well, the problem with
video
Super Freddy
game.
2 is I didn't have a problem with the idea of him getting sucked into the comic book. Like, that's kind of what Freddy was built on for me, is take me into a world that's different in the dream world, and that was kind of what it was supposed to be. But it was butchered because they had to try and go for this kind of heroic thing, and then, you know, they have him get slashed and you see him as a comic book character. Like, it was just dumb.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You've got to come up with solid ideas on how to make that stuff scary. And the idea was just, let's pull him into a comic book. That'll be cool. But then for whatever reason, it was supposed to be comedic.
I think that
Freddy had obviously hit that point by then, and they were trying to get a bit of laugh in there as well. But Jesus,
but that's the fine line for Freddy entirely, isn't it?
Yeah,
he has the best upside in terms of being in dreams. Gives you this kind of open world to play with, but it can also get fucked up real bad.
Yeah,
and Freddy's got some real shit in the canon because Michael and Jason stay right in the wheelhouse mostly. Unless, you know, there's a cult involved, there's some sort of cult involved. But they stay in a wheelhouse as to what you would expect to get. It's just differing levels of that.
So, which is why Freddy hits the extremes, because he gives you something
goes right
different.
Up here and then he.
But then when it goes pear shaped, it goes very, very badly for Freddy.
Yes, definitely. Now, before we finish off, what is your preferred slasher movie franchise? What do you prefer to see?
It's tough because it sort of changes. Like, there was a stretch there where for almost 12 months I was going through Fridays like you wouldn't believe. I was going back to them. I was watching the chapters on Crystal Lake Memories,
and then watching
the film again. And I did the same with Never Sleep Again and Elm Street prior to that. But I always end up going back to Halloween. And I think now that we've got another really good entry into that series, it's probably got the ones that I could go back to most.
Yeah.
Like, I would go back to 1, 2, 4, H2O, and the new one.
Yeah.
Pretty consistently, you know. And even the duds. I mean, number 6... I'm still trying to work out what's going on in that movie in either cut.
Yeah.
So, but I always end up going back to Halloween.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
I'm more of a Friday guy. I think it's just because you know what you're going to get. Jason's, I think, is in some ways more iconic than Michael.
Yeah.
He's more well known.
See, my thing is I feel Michael's the more iconic one because he's never reached the humorous.
Yes.
So like they've always tried to play it straight, always. But to me, that's part of the enjoyment in the Friday the 13th series that I can't get from Halloween.
Yeah.
Is some of those entries like Part 6 and even the ones like Jason X that are dumb and don't work as well as something like Part 6. I can still watch that and get a few laughs out of it and get a bit of enjoyment out of it.
I just think Friday sticks to its formula, and when it's done well, it's done really well. And then you get thrown a curveball like a 6, which takes the template and goes a little bit off script with it, and it's really enjoyable.
What about when you get a curveball that involves shaving your victims and things like that?
That stuff's too far. Like, that's a curveball I won't hit.
Hot dogs and donuts.
Yeah, that, I still don't understand that. But even part 5, which I have a dislike for, I mean, we've just cut it up and laughed heartily. And so I guess I come back to it because I also think Friday was a big part of my youth.
Yeah.
Like, there was a big thing going on when I was in high school, who can watch all the Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Who can get to them all first. And
you went to high school with a collection of absolute fucking idiots, obviously. Sounds like you were fucking studying at the Younger Institute.
I think no, I'd recently been lobotomised. I thought that was going on. It was just me.
You were challenging yourself, obviously.
But I had a big love for Friday back then.
Yeah.
And I think that always brings me back to it. I've got nothing against the Halloween franchise, and I've got nothing against Nightmare. I probably the one I'll least go back to is Nightmare, strangely enough.
Yeah.
Even though I feel it's got more room.
Yep.
It just, some of that stuff, like
doesn't have as many good entries.
4, 5, 6.
That's a slog.
They are just terrible. No, not terrible, but like 4's got its moments. Actually, I think 4's got its moments.
Yeah.
But there's just a lot of baggage to those 3. And 6 is such a... Like, 6 is the worst of any of the franchises.
6 is terrible.
So, I have a hard time going back to Freddy.
I think that's probably fair enough. But again, it's it's splitting hairs.
Yeah.
You can go back to any of them any time, really. But, I think, a bit of a tangent again. I think if there's another remake coming out, which I think on the back of Halloween, there's got to be something brewing. I think Freddy's the one I'd like to see again.
Yeah,
because I just, as you said, it just feels like there's so much you can do with it, especially if you get a filmmaker that's got a really good idea and you let him go to town with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Candyman's the next one.
I know, I heard that.
Which is
actually a pretty good idea.
Jordan Peele involved producing.
I mean, the original Candyman's really good.
Yeah, it is.
It's really good.
Yeah.
So
I actually had a soft spot for the
sequel.
No, I don't know whether it was the sequel or
the third one.
Sequel. The third one was the one with bloody Donna D'Errico, wasn't it? Yeah, no, it wasn't
is
that one.
Is that why you had a soft spot for it?
The second one. I had a soft spot for that for some reason.
Yeah, well, it was still somewhere in that wheelhouse of the first one. So
yeah,
they had a bit
I bet
of
if I watched it now, I'd think it was terrible. But
that'll do us for rating the slashers. If you want to get in touch with us, send us an email at thrillme@iinet.net.au. Like us on Facebook, Thrill Me Podcast Australia, at Podomatic at thrillme.podomatic.com, and we're on Instagram at thrillmepodcastau. Next episode, we still haven't worked that out. We've been, in between houses. There's plenty of love online for your on Instagram, just quietly for your collection.
Yeah,
of stuff. Some of the things we uncovered.
A couple of things I unearthed during my move.
There's a bit of love for that stuff. So there'll be a bit more coming out on Instagram as well. We found a few more little bibs gems and bobs that are quite good. So we'll get them out. We keep your eye on Facebook. We'll decide on what we're going to do. We're coming into the Christmas season, so I think we should do better watch out.
That's locked in, mate.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of Blu-ray copies there ready to go.
I've got a copy as well. So
I've been waiting for that one since last Christmas.
So that'll definitely be on the slate, but there'll be a couple more coming somewhere in between. So until then, take it easy, and we'll catch up with everyone later. Cheers. Find the podcast at Podomatic or on iTunes. Don't forget to rate and review. Like us on Facebook at Thrill Me Podcast Australia, or contact us at thrillme, all one word, all lowercase, at iinet.net.au.